right, so I want to get into questions, and if we don't get to all of them, because there's less time, I definitely will make sure that I answer them either first thing tomorrow or in the Facebook group. I'll talk to Serena about it. But Serena, let's see. Oh, here we go. There's 15 right there. Should I start? Okay, I see 15 answered.
Can you hear me, Trina?
Oh, for some reason I don't hear you loudly.
It's because your AirPods died, which is okay.
Okay.
So you're probably hearing me through your phone, which is fine. But yeah, go ahead and just start answering questions in the Q&A.
Yes. Should I get any headphones or anything, or just keep going?
I think you can keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard that little beep dying thing. Okay, Chrissy Boylan, what part of the nervous system is being trained? Trying to figure out the link to the somatic and or autonomic nervous system. This is a great question. I am not an expert on the nervous system. I've taken some, continuing education on the basics of the nervous system. We are definitely going to get into brain science in one of the next sessions, but my sort of lay person answer would be that because of all of these different techniques that we're doing, it's just very relaxing. And so when I say all these techniques, the rocking is relaxing, the rolling is relaxing, not having an aesthetic goal is relaxing. Being on the ground as opposed to dealing with gravity is relaxing. And so all of these things are, at least in my own experience and from the experience of students that I've taught, is helping people access their parasympathetic nervous system state. So I hope that's helpful. And let's see, next one. Can voluntary pandiculation help with pain and injury? For example, lower back pain or joint injuries. Okay, so as always, it depends. But yes, I find that consciously contracting muscles that are the ones that we hate on, so to speak. So, like when somebody's like, oh, my upper traps, they just hurt all the time, they feel awful. Very often the first thing I will have them do is we'll do this and we'll contract them maximally or progressively for a lot longer. I'm doing it right now because I love doing it and I find it so helpful. And then slowly relaxing. And it often helps. And there's many reasons why. The reason or the story I usually use to describe it is I used to work in a factory, in a warehouse, and the only way we got vacation was if we punched in the morning, did all our work, and punched out at night, right? We had to work in order to earn the vacation days. So you didn't get your 2 weeks vacation until you had been there at least, whatever it was, 6 or 7 months, and you actually showed up and worked. And your muscles are the same. So your muscles will only go on vacation, AKA relax, if they get to do work. Work meaning contract. So whether that contraction is weightlifting and loading, whether it's contracting with pandiculation, it does really help because that is what muscles need to do in order to relax, is contract. And so pandiculation is a great way, especially if other types of contractions are not amenable, say, to the person that you're working with. They'll often be on board with doing that, and it helps. Okay, why the pause is so important. I would say it's the mindfulness part. So, it's going to be different for every person, but I find that when people have automatic movement patterns that are creating pain, it's because they're unaware of either that they're even doing that movement pattern or when they're doing it. They're just unaware. And so the pauses allow people to become aware and to actually notice rather than check out. And that awareness, there's a lot of research showing that increases of proprioception, which is awareness of where your body's in space, can help decrease pain. And I forgot to mention, I talk a lot about that in my book, which is coming out in very soon, like in a week or so. I'll share that info with you all. Okay. This part of the pandiculation movement, were you saying that the front and back of the body was potentially contracted at the same time? And if so, did you release each side at the same time? So the studies that I've done in pandiculation are all coming out of the Hanosomatics method or tradition. Like anything else, I think doing what works for you and your students is what's best. So I would try different ways of pandiculating. Maybe sometimes, we're doing like we did with the roll down, where we're sequentially contracting and observing how that was creating movement and also hopefully helping us to feel relaxed and freer afterwards. But then sometimes I will just do something, really simple that's just one area of the body. So say, I'm lying on my side and I've got my arm here and somebody is, really feeling like tension in their neck and the top of their shoulder. And so we might just pandiculate here, where I'm just, reaching my shoulder up to my ear and then slowly releasing. And then I might do that, say, at a different angle, so more protracted. And I contract and then slowly release. Or I want to make the area of pandiculation a little bigger, so I want to get more neck than upper trap, so I lift my head and I'm using more neck, or I do both. And slowly release. And just pause and take time to notice the after effects. So there's not really any rules on, that I'm aware of on how specific you are with a certain area versus tracking areas up and down. And it's really, just kind of play around with it. Okay. In a standing forward curl, okay, I think this question is very much the same as the last one, rather than just one. Okay, so yeah, I just answered this question. I think that you can do both. I like to teach both ways. Yeah. Okay, when feathering, what if your shoulder is quite high off the ground? Yeah, great question, Vicki. So it doesn't really matter. I would say you could do all kinds of things. Like if you really wanted to feel your shoulder on the ground, you could, stick a blanket under there and prop. But having your shoulder on the ground isn't required for the feathering. The feathering is just little movements at different angles. I'm doing, as I'm talking with my shoulder, to feel into subtlety and nuance of a position that you're in. Okay, what are your recommended questions for a good body dialogue or assessment during the body scan? Oh gosh, yeah, so many different ways of doing body scans. So in the pre-recorded videos, I did one of the body's imprint in the sand. You can get as creative as you like with this. So another image for a body scan that I hear a lot that I love is an ink stamp. Imagining that there's an ink pad underneath you on the floor and you're stamping your shoulder blades into the ink, but they're yielding. So I would say, good, right? There are always going to be things that might trigger somebody. Like somebody maybe had a bad experience at the beach, and so the sand is not good, or with ink. But I would just say any sort of inquiry that helps bring people's awareness and attention to the part of the body that you're focusing on with that somatic movement or sequence. Okay, recommended. Okay, yes, got that from Maud. Especially for those of us who are so used to movement and sensing, what tips and tricks do you have that foster a productive dialogue that is not desensitizing? Let's see. I'm not sure what you mean by desensitizing. So maybe you can clarify that. In general, I find that there are people who are so body aware that it's actually sometimes not good. So there's a lot of research, again in my book, on say people with eating disorders or who are hypermobile who have too much body awareness and need to have a little less because it's not helpful. And then of course there are people that have very little body awareness and need to have more. I don't know if I answered your question, so yeah, re-ask it in a different way if I didn't. Okay, can you show us an example of what you meant by rocking in the previous slide? So let's see. Rocking is also, can be rolling, but rocking can be anything. Like right now I'm rocking. This could be rocking. So any sort of small movement that is soothing. Of course, different things are soothing for different people. But I'm trying to think. Like one thing that I teach a lot that I find is really soothing and I think falls into the rocking category is the dish rag, which is where you reach your left arm up so high, it kind of rocks you over onto your right shoulder blade, and your head follows, and then you reach your right arm up so high that it kind of rocks and rolls you over. And of course, you could do it kind of quickly or slowly. But yeah, it's kind of reminiscent a little bit maybe of being in a rocking chair or hammock. So I hope that's a helpful example. More info about the why of adding various things to a yoga practice. Okay, so that would actually be, the whole session today, because I'm a big why girl. I think that, if you're going to teach something, you should know why you're teaching it and how it will be helpful. So if we go back to this slide here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 reasons why you would want to include somatics in your yoga classes, and then on the next page there's another 3 reasons why. So hopefully those 7 are helpful for you, Lisa, along with all the others. Okay. What's the importance, relevance of the X roll? Yes, okay, that's such a good question, Nicole. So the X roll comes mostly from the Bartenia Fundamentals, and I get so excited about this. It has to do with developmental movement patterns. So I took a training called Dynamic Neuromuscular Stabilization, or DNS, and it was also all about developmental movement patterns. I don't have any kids, and I'm glad, but I must say the one thing I love with other people's kids is watching them progress through those developmental phases. So the X roll is really a way to reconnect to some of those patterns that we did as children that are so beneficial, that many of us have lost the ability to do. So just being on your back and figuring out how to roll onto your belly, initiating with an arm versus a leg, initiating with the eyes and head versus maybe like elbow and arm and head. So yes, oh my gosh, there's so much more on that. Let me grab one more book that I wanted to make sure I showed. Let's see, this is called Somatics in Action. And it's the same publisher as my book, Handspring Publishing. And what I love about it is she is a professor, I forget which college, it's somewhere in the South. And she is an integrator, an interdisciplinary movement educator. And this book is basically, it's described as a Pilates, yoga, and dance-inspired movement system. And she has chapters in the book on Pilates, chapters on yoga, chapters on somatics, and then also how she teaches all three modalities to her dancers in the university program. But she goes into, there's just a lot of, there's like a whole page with a picture of an X-roll and the physical cues and the energetic cues. So yeah, that could be like X-rolls could be a whole course, but we're going to do a lot more X-rolling as we go, and so hopefully you'll get a feel for what it's all about. Okay. How do you recommend people proceed if doing these sequences creates pain or reveals stiffness as people do them? Great question. I'm going to take a sip of water. Okay, so we're going to get into pain. When I teach, I usually will say, because everyone's interpretation of pain is different, is it sharp shooting pain? That's not good. We want to change what we're doing. Is there numbness and tingling? That's not good. We want to change what we're doing. Does it feel like icy hot or piercing or sharp? Not good. We want to change what we're doing. Are you feeling stretch? That's tolerable. That's probably okay, right? That's stretching, because some people interpret stretch as pain. Or I'll say, are you feeling effort and work, muscular contraction? That's tolerable. And they'll often say yes, and I say, that's okay, right? That's strengthening. So, again, there could be a whole, but actually I'm glad you brought this up. We will go into pain science, but I highly recommend this book. Shelley Prosko is a dear friend of mine, and she and Neil Pearson and Marlisa Sullivan, the three of them are just brilliant people. And this is called Yoga Science and Pain Care, and it goes into all of the depths of pain science and how that relates to yoga. If people are noticing stiffness, again, I would put that into the are you feeling tolerable amounts of stretch? That's okay, right? Like part of why we're doing this is so you don't feel as stiff, hopefully. Okay. Damaged meniscus, what somatic movements would you recommend and help with coping with pain and recovery? Would your rotation help? Okay, Andy. So I'm not a clinician, and so I don't prescribe movements. What I do is work with people one-on-one, and kind of just like I said in the answer to the question before, if we're doing something and they say, I feel sharp shooting pain in my knee, I'm like, okay, well, we definitely need to stop doing that and do something else. If they say, I'm feeling work, like strengthening, then that's usually good. But I just always make sure they're working with a physical therapist, and I have colleagues that are PTs. So, I honor my scope of practice, essentially, and I'll say, well, what are you working on with your PT? I'll talk with your PT, and we can expand on what you all are already doing, or if you finished your physical therapy, and you're open to me talking to your PT about what would be helpful for next steps. Okay, you mentioned that a lot of somatic movement work is accessible to people of different levels. I teach yoga to seniors, and the practice we just did would not have been accessible to them. Especially worry about two things: laying on the side on the floor as far on their hips, And flexion of the spine is generally a no-no due to osteoporosis. Is there thoughts on that from a somatic movement perspective? Yes, so I am a movement optimist, and I am of the opinion that we should move all of our bodies in all of the ways, because otherwise we lose the ability to move our bodies in those ways. So when somebody says they're not allowed to flex their spine, I know that they're flexing their spine during the day because they have to live their life. So I'm not, I mean, the people who speak really eloquently to this are Greg Lehman. It's Greg, Greg, and then Lehman, Lehman. He's a physical therapist, a researcher, an academic, and a continuing education provider. There's other people as well that I would send you to. But yeah, so and also a group class is a group class. So I have a lot of private clients. Actually, I just had one yesterday, and there were lots of the things in the sequence that she can do, and then lots of things that she can't. And so we did the things that she can do because it's private. So I always, just sort of put it out there that a group class is a group class. You're never going to be able to do a one size fits all for everybody. So yeah, I recommend like people that are struggling, with certain things that they can take a private lesson with you, or if you have like a very special type of class that's very small and everybody's conditions, and you can create, a syllabus and a sequence that works for everybody, which is usually really hard. That's why I'm a big advocate for private sessions. So
Hey,
practice,
Trina?
so I think if you say this practice meaning that class that we just did, it was an integration. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm gonna assume that's okay. Yes. So, and each class is going to be different, Mary. So tomorrow there will be, in the morning, maybe a little less somatics and more yoga. Sometimes I do more somatics and less yoga, or some sort of integration of the two. Okay, hopefully I'm fine. Yes. So that's going to be totally up to you, Mary, how much you want to, say it's an hour class, how much is yoga, how much of it's somatics, how much do you blend the two together? Okay, during the lower body initiated rolling, I felt some instability in my sacrum, a common problem I have with twists low in the spine, and I now feel some pain. Any tips on how to do that movement? If I held something between my knees, may it be quite awkward for rolling onto the belly? Campbell, okay, great. So when people feel instability, I'm hypermobile, the best solution is strength training. So, rather than trying to do the movement in a different way, I recommend adding load to your movement diet progressively over time so that you can do simple, slow movements like somatics and not feel any instability. So that's the train I ride on as somebody who's kind of lived it and also has, studied it and writing a book about it. Yes, whatever kind of strength training you're willing to do. Or open to do. So whether that's dumbbells, kettlebells, whether that's spring resistance on the reformer and Pilates equipment, whether that's stretchy bands. So when we feel like the clicking and the popping and the unstable stuff, it's a surefire message from your body saying add some load, add some resistance, add some strength to build some resilience so that you don't feel so unstable. Okay. Why?
create new brain connections without a preconceived notion of aesthetics. How will creating new brain connections without having a preconceived notion of aesthetics help someone? Okay. So I think that a lot of people move in ways that they've been told to move without questioning it, or move in ways that they have visually seen, either in video or photograph, without questioning it. And when that happens, they're moving in a way that might work really well for someone else, but not for them. Or they're moving in that way all the time because that's what they've either heard or seen as the right thing to do. And so when people move in a specific way over and over again, without really checking in to see if it is helpful for them or useful for them, depending on their goals, they often end up with repetitive stress injuries. So introducing variability into your movement practice, into your life, into if you exercise or exercise program, can often help people get out of pain. So again, this goes back to that same thing of new brain connections is increased proprioception. Increased proprioception leads to decreased pain. And so yeah, I think as far as like the why of adding somatics is also going to come back down to, Lisa, if you like it. So if you deep dive into somatics and you like how it feels in your body and you've had benefit from it, that's going to come through when you teach and explain it to your students. And if you try somatics and you don't like it and it doesn't make sense in your body, you're not going to do it, you're not going to teach it, and right, that's kind of that. You'll teach something else instead. So, yeah. Okay. Just trying to match the time zone. What time is it there now? It is 4:15 here in Los Angeles. Okay. Do you ever work with seniors? Yes, I do work with seniors, lots of seniors. And I work with them privately, one-on-one. So yeah, rolling the spine. So we want to move our spine in all directions in all the ways, because you need to be able to move your spine in all directions in all the ways to get through your life, to bend over to tie your shoe, to put dishes in the dishwasher, to take your clothes out of the dryer, out of the washer into the dryer, to get in and out of your car. Your spine has to be able to move in all the ways. So if we stop moving it in a specific way, we won't be able to move it in that way. With that being said, if certain ways of moving your spine cause sharp shooting pain, numbness, or tingling, then you want to employ what's called graded exposure. And of course, this is, where you introduce movement slowly over time, exposing people to it where it doesn't flood their nervous system and they're in so much pain that like they can't function or think, but where maybe it is tolerable. So again, this gets back into the pain science stuff that we'll get into a little bit more. Yeah, but again, scope of practice too, and everyone's different. So yes. Okay, when I was doing the pre-recorded class, twisting and spiraling, does the twist need to necessarily come from the shoulder and the hip, or can it be considered as a twist when isolating just the upper and lower body? I have known them as upper body rotation or lower body rotation. Let's see, does the twist need to necessarily come from the shoulder and hip? So I think I understand what you're asking, but with rotations and twists, I'm a fan of doing it all the ways and then picking the one you like on that day. So, sometimes with a twist, say, if you're lying on your side, there's a follow fry sequence that I love very much. And you explore all the different ways you can rotate and twist your spine. So say I start and all I do is rotate my head and neck. Nothing else moves. And then I do this.
and I am rotating my head and my rib cage, or I keep my head still and I'm just rotating my head and ribs. My rib cage, but my pelvis is not rotating. Then I could do this one. I could rotate my pelvis, but not rotate my thoracic spine or cervical spine. I could rotate my pelvis and low back and thoracic spine in the same direction. I could do opposite. I could rotate my pelvis forward and my thoracic spine and cervical spine backwards. So, to answer your question, there's no right or wrong way to twist. There's just multiple combinations that you would choose or not choose depending on what the goal is. So, say in strength training, a lot of times we'll train anti-rotation. So we'll pick a movement if it's really challenging and you're trying not to rotate, like a pow-off press, right? So there's like a stretchy band holding it and it's attached to the doorknob. And you're trying not to rotate the pelvis as you hold it. So I hope that answers your question. And then there's times when you want to keep your pelvis still and rotate your thorax and you've got a big heavy weight. So again, move all the stuff in all the ways and know why you're doing it for what goal as far as rotation is concerned. Okay, are the knee slides in the recorded class considered feathering? I think they can be. Yeah, that's a great question, Gina. I think, these little tiny movements, this one comes from Feldenkrais as far as I know, is I guess what the feathering is more of noticing a restriction. So say, you're moving your top knee forward and back, and when you move it back, it feels a little sticky. So instead of just going forward, back, maybe you go a little bit more just back, but smaller and slower. So yeah, it reminds me, my artist brain thinks of painting. And you know how when you paint, say, with acrylics, and you've got your blue and you've got your white, and you dip the paintbrush in the white, and then you add it to the blue, and you're just kind of deciding, do I want it to be mostly light blue or mostly dark blue? And that's kind of how I think of feathering. It's you're just deciding, how much do I want to go this way or that? And yes, I don't know if hopefully that helps. Okay, will you or can you talk at some point about some of the more common bad movement patterns? Okay, so, I would say that there aren't really good and bad movement patterns. There are usually movement patterns you do too much of or not enough of. So in most people's lives, the movement patterns they do too much of or they only do are sitting, standing, and sleeping, right? Because that's really all our life requires, right? We sit at the breakfast table, we sit in a car, we sit at the office, we come home and sit at the dinner table, and then we sit in front of the TV, and then we go to bed at night. And there's some standing here and there, but that's about it. And so your body really isn't very good at doing any other movement pattern besides sitting, standing, or sleeping. And then, of course, there's movement patterns that correlate to specific tasks or exercises. So, the most efficient way to, swing the tennis racket and hit the ball so that the force goes throughout your whole body more evenly instead of you getting tennis elbow because you're mostly just using your arm to swing the racket instead of your whole body. So yeah, it's a really broad question. And it depends on the person, their life, the situation kind of thing. Yeah. Let's say, could you say that contraction is another word for pendiculation? What word would you use in a general public class that isn't familiar with the term? Yeah, definitely. Because when you pendiculate, you are contracting muscles. What makes it pendiculation is those three things,
which I don't have memorized, but here they are. Yeah, the 3 phases of pandiculation. So, and this is according to the Thomas Hanna methodology, and how they describe pandiculation is these 3 phases. And that's what makes it different than, say, like a contract relax technique. For myself as a movement educator and an interdisciplinary mover and teacher, I don't get super hung up on the terms when I'm teaching people, because I just want to help them feel better. So, the terms are the terms, but terms are always, they're made up by somebody in some place. So if it doesn't resonate with you, just teach it in a way that helps your students. Yeah. Okay, I love the practice we just did, but my clients would find that quite difficult. Will we be learning a more beginner style for very stiff, in pain beginner people? Yeah, so, there's always going to be something that is too hard for someone. Meaning, like, there's the person who is in physical therapy and all they can do is lie on the table and get their e-stim, their ice, and their hot pack, right? And maybe some hands-on stuff and some neck traction. That's like that acute pain phase. Then once they're out of that acute pain phase, the physical therapists start to introduce movement and exercise. And the way they do that is through a process of graded exposure. And that is individual to the specific person, because we're all different. So, like I said earlier, my clients who have special needs take private sessions with me. And I also work in connection with the physical therapist. And when I teach a group class is a group class. So when you show up, you need to know from the person you're taking privates with, or from the physical therapist, kind of where you are, like what you can and can't do at the moment, what you should and shouldn't do. And that's kind of how a group class works. So I would say for your clients, that you would want to do privates with them, because then you can really customize the somatic practice to them and teach them things that they can do and progress them individually. Pregnancy, be contraindicated for the type of practice we did today. Val, I have never been pregnant, and I've never studied prenatal or postnatal yoga or Pilates or any of those things. And again, I am a person who doesn't believe in the diagnosis dictating what you can and can't do. I'm a person who believes in what's called the biopsychosocial approach. And the physical therapists who practice that don't tell people what to do based on their diagnosis. They tell people what's okay and not okay based on the individual. Because everybody's different, and it's going to be different at each stage of the pregnancy, the injury, etc. Yeah. Okay. When is my book available? Is it specific somatic and yoga? So let me do a little share screen, because I promised myself I would. Let's see. Share screen. And then let's see if I can figure out how to, let's see, Google Chrome. And then escape. Let's see if I can get out of the PowerPoint. There we go. Exit. And here we go. Well, that is the front and the back cover. So it is called Yoga Deconstructed, Movement Science Principles for Teaching. And it is going to the printer next week. So I'm not sure if they're going to have a digital version first. This is the printed out version of it that I've been going through. But there's 8 chapters in the book. And chapter 1 is called Introduction to Yoga Deconstructed. And I go over the 4 principles of Yoga Deconstructed. Then chapter 3 is Proprioception and Pain Science. Chapter 4 is called Creating Grounding and Resilience with Interoception. Chapter 5 is Finding Embodiment with Sensory Feedback Methods. Chapter 6 is Somatics. It's called Using Somatics to Prepare for Asana. Chapter 7 is Preparing to Load using preparatory exercises. And chapter 8 is called How to Design a Yoga Deconstructed Class. So the book subtitle was originally Bridging the Gap from Rehab to the Classroom or to the Yoga Studio. But because no one's going to yoga studios right now, we changed it to Movement Science Principles for Teaching. But yeah, it's basically what I do, how I teach, and how I work with people who have done their physical therapy but aren't ready for a group class, and how I would work with them privately, as well as how I would create a group class that could hopefully help people that are somewhat similar in their needs. Okay, can you talk to the invitation of play as exploration in somatic movement sequences? Excuse me. I noticed the more I combined play and discovery, the more I responded, especially in the body scan, pausing, and feathering. Yes. Oh my gosh. Walter. Yes. I think play is so important. It's so, so important. So when we were kids, we moved to play. We played to move. We went on the playground at recess, and we didn't think about it as right or wrong movements. We didn't think about it as something we had to do on our to-do list. We were exploring and discovering how our body moves, how our body interacts with the environment, how we can make it fun, how it can be social. I'm getting so excited. I really believe that we need that as adults. So when I teach, I try to bring that to my students, whether it's in a group class setting or in a private session, because I think that's what brings the joy back. So yes, if you can invite people to play and explore, I think they learn more, they become more relaxed, they feel better, and they have a more positive experience. One of my dear friends and colleagues, Carrie Owerko, is doing a book for Handspring, and it's going to be all about play and movement. And she's phenomenal. So if you're into play like I am, we've been told that we're very similar. Definitely check out her work. She's got classes on Yoga International.